Week 12 is upon us, and that means you've now got 3 precious weeks to get lineups where they need to go for the fantasy football playoffs. We're going to do what we always do here on Tuesdays. We're going to review every single top-performing player across every position, try to get a read on who's playing well, who's going to keep it up, and who might slow down the home stretch. Of course, we're also going to look at my own BBM teams and my drafters teams and my big board teams, and we'll see where we're landing with that. And spoiler alert, but let's get into it here. Appreciate our guys being here in chat as always. The Snowman. This video, as I always say up top, the niche of the niche video content I do every week, but try to make it count here, of course, and we'll do the best we can to make it a fun one. Even though I got NBA today, I got other things that are fun besides football, you know. But I'm still glad to hang out here and talk about this bullshit. I guess my opening monologue about basketball, where we are now. Again, 3 weeks left. I know for a lot of people too in the community, I know for me especially, week 14 going to be a real anxiety point because there's pretty much every team that I targeted this year in fantasy football is on bye on week 14. So it's going to be tough for me. But really these last 3 weeks, I think the main things are you're either on one side of the aisle or the other, and not to make it that's not a political debate, guys. We've had enough of that over the last months. One of those things where like, you're either one of the guys that has your Saquons, your Jamar Chases, your Derrick Henrys, who else would we even say up here? I mean, I guess QB-wise, Lamar would be it. Your Burrow, certainly Jamar Chase has got to be the biggest part of that, I feel like. Alvin Kamara's, whatever names you want to name that we know are the high advance rate guys right now. You're either on that side and you're going in and you're the chalk and you're going to hope the chalk keeps pushing and the best players have been the best players all year, continue to be the best players. Or you're on the other side where you are not advancing as many teams. The ones you are advancing, you're feeling like, oh, I've got some unique players, but this is kind of a catastrophe. One of those things is going to hit. One of those things is going to work out. So there's going to be a lot of chalk success, or it's going to be a lot of low-owned players starting to take off. And it certainly could be a thing as well, where I do think on social media, it's been talked about a lot this week. I think Davis Maddock put out a tweet like, hey, would you rather have 35 advancing teams that's all chalk, or 25 advancing teams that's like completely unique, not players that are high advance rate guys? And basically there was like some debate about it. Mike Leone came in, of course, the ETR data guy, both Splash Play alums, both Davis and Leone. So shout out to them for their contributions to the channel historically. The point being, like Leone was saying, that you want to have the good players generally, and there really might be a point of diminishing returns where you're, let's say, comparing 28 teams that have all the chalk versus 25 teams that don't have the chalk. Maybe then you want the ones that aren't chalk then, but in general, you want the best players. So for all the people out there, like, I think there's kind of this like battle between, zero RB drafters and like the streamer community and like people like me. And I'm not adversarial about it. I know we've talked about Liam Murphy taking a lot of dings overall over the course of people just bashing him. But I would say in general, it's like, if you got the stuff right, more power to you. I hope it continues to hit for you. At the same token, though, you kind of understand that you drafted a certain way. It's going to run an exact like loggerheads to the other side of drafting, which are people that did draft for the late season upside, people that did draft based upon, hey, I don't want these older bell cow backs that maybe a little bit inefficient in the past. So you're kind of have these two things come to a head. And in reality, I know for myself playing basketball the last few years, I mean, a couple of years ago, Justin Jefferson was the big chalk coming in. He advanced a lot of teams. As we talked about a few times on here, Justin Jefferson teams, some of mine included, just shit the bed entirely. He didn't have great games in the playoffs overall. And I think in particular fell apart one game versus Green Bay, where it just killed every lineup. Last year, Tyreek Hill, same thing. Actually, no, that same year, Jefferson, Jalen Hurts was another one where he had been a big advance rate guy, a huge part of success for a lot of teams that year. He ends up getting hurt, ends up missing a few games. As a result, those Jalen Hurts teams, some of them had no QBs left. They all just died on the vine, or a lot of them died on the vine. Same token, last year, Tyreek Hill, the big advance rate guy, doesn't do a whole lot for you in the finals. It's kind of thing we see happen over and over again in best ball, where it's like Josh Jacobs, another one 2 years ago, where he was like the advance rate king, did absolutely nothing in the playoffs. And it's not to say that Saquon, Derrick Henry, and those guys are Josh Jacobs or Justin Jefferson or Tyreek Hill, who frankly are all players like that. I like at various points and, to some extent in those draft years. But it is to say, like, that's what chalk does. That's what the chalk does for anything in gambling. It's important to balance good chalk. Yesterday, Joe Mixon, you heard me swearing up and down, just play Joe Mixon. That ended up being good chalk. I think that's sort of where the balance is in gambling for anything. And in reality, whenever you're the chalk, you have to defend being the chalk. You have to defend being the best play. And that's going to be the case heading into the playoffs. So wherever you are, there's still hope. As long as you have one bullet, you're still alive. True of both John Wick and also of best ball. We'll see what happens on the home stretch. Checking the chats here. Definitely a gauntlet the next 3 weeks. Yes, we will see. You're allowed to talk, but not about Ladd McConkey. If he comes up naturally, great, but it's not the Ladd McConkey show. I just need to focus on the content more instead of everybody else's bullshit. Morning, finally listening to you live. Love portfolio review show. Thank you. You're one of few. You're one of few. And advancing 13 to 2017 is one of Kamara, Henry, Barkley. Advancing 17 out of 123 without. I mean, look, still a good advance rate for you. So kudos to that for Nolan. But yes, at this point, at least you have rooting interest on both sides, which I think is probably what you're rooting for most at this point. So your top players overall, of course, we're going to go through the top overall scorers, go position by position as well. Lamar Jackson, down week for Lamar here. Kind of saw the bad side of Lamar in a way we hadn't seen. This is his lowest points total of the year. Going against Pittsburgh, we saw them do some damage to Jaden Daniels the week before. Similar players, even though they don't like being compared to each other, Jaden in particular. And coaches, too, don't like to compare them because Lamar's been great and an MVP, and Jaden's just a rookie who's seemingly regressing before our eyes. We'll talk about that in a moment. Lamar, though, I think the downside here is just that against a really good defense, he can be a little bit more vulnerable. He takes a lot of sacks, which I think is like one of the things that for fantasy kind of opens you up for more opportunity, especially because sometimes, I mentioned this last week, I believe, there's one play, I think 2 weeks ago, where he like basically took a sack, lost 10 yards, then ended up making it back by running for 20 yards on the way back to get another first down. It's like, that's the upside you get for fantasy. The downside is when the reality of like real life football goes poorly for him. You do kind of see him in precarious spots that are not the best for him to produce. And sometimes that's what you're going to get. As for his matchups down the home stretch, like Houston should be a little bit tougher than it seems in week 17. Everything else, I mean, look, there's going to be games that are a little bit tougher, games that are not. Still think you want Lamar more than not. But the reality is like there are a good amount of Lamar teams advancing. He is sort of going to be a chalk play. He's the number one scorer on the year. So I have Lamar advancing teams for me. I'll keep rooting for him as much as I can. But really do think the spot for Lamar, the main thing that's driving his value is just that Ravens defense is not that good. So I think that's going to keep being the case. He's been great. He's got a lot of control over the offense, can improvise, can free ball some plays. Sometimes it's not going to work out. Sometimes it's going to end up in a 40-yard completion to Isaiah Likely. Like that's sort of what happens. And Lamar, too, for what it's worth, Deontay Johnson kind of left him out to dry a little bit there last game where they tried some deep targets to him. I think he dropped 2, or at least didn't complete 2. It wasn't great for Lamar overall. I think it'll be better for him. So Pittsburgh's been a tough matchup for a lot of people. Not surprised by it, but 15.9 fantasy points to the floor. You'll survive with that as long as you have a decent QB2 with him. Let's see. People were putting Daniels in the top 5 QBs in the NFL after 5 weeks, 11-2. It was a bit crazy. Look, I still think he can be in that tier. I think the issue is really just that the offense is just very conservative. And apparently some reports coming out that he's not been practicing as much as he should be because of the rib injury. So it's tough for Jaden, but we'll talk about him in a minute. Joe Burrow. So Joe Burrow crushing right now, mostly out of desperation. 3 straight weeks of 29 or more fantasy points. I think that for Joe Burrow in this spot, he's producing really well. He's playing well. The real concern for them is just Cincinnati's motivation at this point. I believe they're 4-7 now, heading into their bye week as well. I think they make one more run here, but you run into the chance that if they go 4-8, I mean, what's the Bengals schedule? Because honestly, this might matter more for how you try to break them down moving forward. So the Bengals schedule moving forward. So they go to the bye, then they get the Steelers. That kind of feels like a loss. I'm sure they're going to try to throw their way out of it, but that's a tough matchup for this Bengals team right now. Bengals Cowboys, that should be an easy one. That's the Simpsons game that they can't flex out of Monday Night Football because they've been doing animations for it for 2 months. And that's going to be a brutal game in a couple weeks. Titans game winnable. I mean, look, if they go 5-8 or 6-8, I think they keep fighting. I think they lose the Steelers. I will say that, but if they have these 2 games coming up, I think they might just go down to the wire trying to play it out. So the bad news, you're getting that tough Broncos defense in week 17, no matter what. And that is a team that is seemingly equipped, not because of just Patrick Surtain, but the schematic stuff there, shutting down a lot of stuff. But I would say for Joe Burrow, my hope has been that the Bengals are not competitive enough that they just kind of pull back, call off the dogs a little bit, is an expression I probably use too much. I don't know that's actually going to be the case looking at that schedule because they lose next week. They go to 4-8. That's about time where I think you could call it quits because the odds of making the playoffs are pretty low, but they might feel like 9-8 could sneak in, and I guess that could potentially win a wild card. So Bengals are going to try to run the table, and it's going to be great for fantasy, but not good if you don't have those guys. Would be my guess right now. Jalen Hurts, bit of a down game this past week. Some talk in the media about the tush-push stuff. Protections being built into Saquon's contract where basically his bonus perks are not tied to touchdowns or tied to just yardage performance stuff. So if he gets 2,000 yards, he ends up getting about $1 million in value because he gets extra money this year and then more money put on the next year's contract. So watching Saquon get into 2,000 all-purpose yards, that's something, too, that is going to be a motivator for him, assuming he can stay healthy down the home stretch. For Jalen Hurts, wasn't a good game this week. I'm kind of surprised it wasn't a good game. That said, I still think for Jalen, you're getting the upside here. He's moved to QB3. He's passed some of these lesser QBs, these lower value QBs like Baker Mayfield, like Jaden Daniels. So for Jalen Hurts, he's starting to pay off the price tag more. Would think down the home stretch, he's actually pretty well equipped. They have to keep winning games to win the East. They have to keep winning games for seeding in the NFC as well. So I think Jalen Hurts, again, as long as he can stay healthy, like to control the offense. And I like as well for him, if you have him without Saquon, you're getting great leverage on a 40% advance rate player, 45% advance rate player, whatever he ends up being. So for Jalen Hurts, there's a lot of merits to having him right now, even though I think he has not really paid off his elite ADP so far. Saquon should get a bonus every time he gets to the 1 yard line. That'd be a funny way to calculate it. But yeah, I mean, look, they knew coming in what the deal was going to be. And Saquon himself knew, and look, they're winning games. They're doing well enough. Teams looking better than they should. Still feel like they go up against the Detroit in the playoffs. I mean, then this is like a chalk take, but like, I think Detroit's a lot better than them. But honestly, with how they're playing offensively, I think that would at least be a competitive spot, probably, 50-point total kind of game. So Philly's in the hunt. Playoff best ball starting soon as well, or might already have tournaments out. I'm not following that closely because I'm just not there yet mentally. Eagles, I think a fun team to target for sure. Probably going to be priced for it, but I think their chance of making a run as good as anybody's. Who's not the Lions. Josh Allen at number 4. Josh Allen, another elite QB, kind of coming into form. Elite QB making a late run here, which is kind of funny. A year where receiver has been this bad. Elite QB solidifying on the home stretch. Josh Allen, though, doing it more with the running stuff. I guess, honestly, Jalen Hurts is with the tush-push touchdowns. But Josh Allen, the big superhero game-winning touchdown this past week versus KC. He's looking good. He's run the ball a little bit more, especially in high-leverage spots, which is what we want to see because he's not run the ball overall as much as he has in the past. About 5 rushes a game for Josh Allen's been the overall haul in the season. That's it for Josh Allen. I think the main thing for him is like the stack partners never made sense. A lot of people took him with Dalton Kincaid. That might not be a good bet the rest of the year. Curtis Samuel, so in some signs of life, but not really enough to have any faith in it. Besides that, you stack him with Shakir. You feel okay about that, but it's not something where you feel like it's a tremendous play, and you probably missed out on some RBs in that range that were also pretty good. So Allen stacks tough. Allen himself, fine. Allen can win BBM, but I do think his chance of high advance rate stuff drop it a little bit more here because of the lack of natural stack partners having great years. And also the fact that like Lamar coming up, Hurts coming up, Burrow coming up. These are all very chalky, popular QBs amongst a certain set. Frankly, I wouldn't doubt that there's a lot of Joe Burrow teams paired with Saquon, with Henry, with those kind of guys. Because I think Burrow is kind of, not that he's like a boomer QB, but he does have that kind of casual appeal, I think. Derrick Henry at number 5, 2 down weeks in a row. My bet was that Keaton Mitchell coming in was not going to be great for him. I think it's mostly a game script thing, though. The issue is Derrick Henry, anytime they are in 3rd and long situations, and Lamar's taken a lot of bad sacks lately. I'm not sure what his rate is overall. But I think for Derrick Henry, that's part of the issue for him is there's a lot of 3rd and 10 kind of situations, a lot in 3rd and 15 situations sometimes for Lamar. That's an issue for him because he's not going to be on the field for those snaps. And then also, like, he's not getting in position as easily to punch things in. The one good thing for Derrick Henry is that Justin Tucker is getting less reliable, so maybe they start to run more in situations that might normally be a field goal or at least try to convert extended drives. For Henry, his advance rate's got to be dropping a little bit. I don't think you feel bad about him. He was cheaper than Saquon, so I think that's a positive, and he's still ahead of him for points on the year. But I feel like he's with the player. If I were going to really worry about somebody having that Josh Jacobs kind of plummeting a little bit down the home stretch, I think Derrick Henry would be the guy. I still think he'll give you like a touchdown every week for the most part, but I think the yardage might not be there as much in the PPR points / half PPR points, and not quite there as much as you want it to be. Baker Mayfield on a bye this week, been looking good. Does get Mike Evans back this week. South still very much in contention. Even the Saints are technically not out of it in the South because they're only 2 games back at 4-7, which is kind of sad, but that's not a shocker for the NFC South and what we know about it. For Baker Mayfield overall, I think he's had a great year with where you took him ADP-wise. It looks good. The issue is a lot of Baker teams going to be tied with Chris Godwin, so Baker Otten teams, I think, are going to feel good down the home stretch. Baker teams where the person went Evans and Otten, I think going to feel good as well because they benefited some from Godwin being out and they didn't get the big boost Godwin got. So if you're advancing one of those, I think those are pretty live down the home stretch. Tampa Bay, Carolina, week 17 as well, if I'm remembering correctly. So my week 17 correlations have kind of started to leave my brain a little bit, but they'll come back once we're in the money time, hopefully. The real money time, not this money time. But Baker Mayfield, look, good run out coming down the home stretch, playing for a playoff spot. Weapons getting a little bit worse, but Evans should be healthy again. He survived without it. Didn't have any really bad days besides this 1 9-pointer. So for Baker Mayfield, I think you're in a pretty good spot with him still being top 6. Jamar Chase, the best receiver on the board. Another good game for him. Not fantastic in half PPR, but 23 fantasy points relative to the 2024 wide receiver situation. About as good as you're going to get. For Jamar Chase overall, I think the main thing for me is that what we talked about with Burrow, where my hope has been that the Bengals just kind of dial it back because they really aren't playing for anything. And their coach as well. I think there's some kind of sniping about the play calling from Jamar Chase after the game. I worry about him losing the locker room down the home stretch. Or if you're a Bengals backer, I'd be worried about that. If you don't have Jamar Chase at a good amount, and I do have more Jefferson by a good amount, I have more Amon-Ra, I have more guys in that range. You want the Bengals to pull the plug. You want the Bengals to realize. You want Jamar Chase to pull the plug, especially because he's not under a long-term contract. He'll get paid even if he were to like tear his ACL. But not wishing that, but like obviously just trying to talk about the reality of the situation. He could get hurt. He's going to get paid probably more than Justin Jefferson at this point, no matter what. That said, for Jamar Chase, I think that I don't know, man. They can still go either way. I think the Bengals are going to try, but Jamar Chase, I worry about the motivation a little bit. And frankly, T. Higgins being back in is just not good for Chase either. Like Chase got there, didn't have 100 yards this week, did have the 2 touchdowns. His upside gets capped a little bit more by Higgins being in there because like Higgins getting more targets than him on the year. Higgins getting more red zone looks on the year. Higgins getting more deep targets on the year. Like they've been using Higgins pretty well when he's been healthy, which has not been a lot. But for Jamar Chase, those are sort of the main concern points for him. I'm not 100% sold he holds on to the wide receiver 1 the rest of the year, but he's good enough. Higgins is better. That's a hot take. And Ben Johnson, next Cincy coach, also a hot take. They're not going to pay him. Since he wouldn't pay, like he wants 10 to like 15 million a year, where the reports last year to leave Detroit. 2 weeks away from playoffs, and 95% of my teams are officially dead. Gotta love best ball. Good luck, everyone, if you advance. I mean, the hope is that those 5% of teams that you do have advancing, one of them is unique enough to get through and can survive its pods. Anything's possible. It's just, like really your hope is that you land in a chalk pod, the chalk busts week 1, and then it's just the Wild West from that point on. But we'll see. Jayden Daniels at number 9. So the rib stuff is maybe more of an issue than it seemed. When he first came back with the rib thing, played well, I was like, it seems like the same Jayden to me. Running less, but I get that, when you have the rib issue. And then also, Pittsburgh did a good job shutting down some of the stuff he does well. This week, it's not good. I'm really frustrated by Washington's offense. And this happens sometimes. Like, I think AR last year was like the one outcome where it's been like, man, I'm so happy this rookie's run out and how they're using them. And then this year, they fucking ruined it anyway. For Washington, it's like, just let this guy take some shots. And maybe because of the rib issue, he can't take shots. You see him in practice throwing 50-yard bombs and stuff. And like he's playing around. He threw the ball into the net from 50 yards last week and was like, haha, laughing around, saying, fuck you to guys as a joke. So he can throw it deep. I just don't know what they're doing. I think they want to keep him protected too much. It's like an overprotective parent, I feel like, with Washington right now, where like they know what they have in Jayden. They know they have a chance to make the playoffs, and they just don't want to fuck it up along the way. And that's something. And they know their defense too is a little more precarious than I think people realize. Like they're getting some pressure now. And the secondary, even with Lattimore in there, I don't think they're a good secondary. So with them right now, I think they're kind of playing with house money, but a little too aware of playing with house money. They're not playing fast and free with it. Like you should play with house money. They're playing like real tight. Like they want to conserve every free penny they've gotten out of this Jayden run so far. So I don't love it. I'm hoping it gets better. I hope that we've reached a point where it's like, you have to kind of look at the mirror and go, how do we get this guy to more of a ceiling? But he's got to get to more of a ceiling with rushing more and with more deep shots and more passing, more dropbacks overall. They don't seem willing to do that. So it's kind of frustrating besides that. Run game is good, but wide receiver talent is the best outside of Terry. I mean, Noah Brown is open. The separation score is there for him. Like those, like honestly, Ertz has been really open too, even though you wouldn't think so, but relative to an old tight end, or relative to tight end in general, he's been getting open too. So like, I don't think that's really the case. I think it's just more that they don't call aggressive plays for these guys. And also Terry, it's like he gets his one deep shot, but like, people were going, coming to the chat last week and like Quinion Mitchell like shuts him down. It's like, no, like he didn't shut him down. If you throw 10 targets Terry's way, they all get deflected and like Terry's off his route and out of sync. Like, yeah, then he shut him down. Just not targeting guys like fucking malpractice. You force the ball to your best guys. And that's sort of the thing I think Washington doesn't want to do because they know there's a risk that comes with that if you're playing against certain players or certain situations. So I hate it, but that's sort of where I am in my Washington discourse. Still think they're going to make the playoffs. Still hope that there's a ceiling to be had here. Still think having Atlanta in week 17 is good. But like Jayden needs to give me some fucking money. Jayden and McLaurin need to give me some money games on the home stretch. And I don't know if I'm going to get them. I need one this week or next week for Jayden because like no week 14 game for Washington. So it's basically that. doing what they can just to get the win, but yeah, very protective of them. I mean, it goes hand in hand, but yeah, it's conservative ball to protect the long-term interests of the franchise, and also the fact that Kingsbury just frankly loves to call conservative horizontal offense. So it's kind of a lot of things coming together, and it sucks because I think there is a world where Jaden could be even better, but I don't know if we're going to see it this year. Bo Nix, and he still has a ceiling, but I don't know if we're going to see like what the apex should be in my mind. 29 fantasy points for Bo Nix this week. He's looking good. Sean Payton's talking him up. Obviously, a really soft matchup against Atlanta this week. Atlanta did not come ready to play on either side of the ball. For Bo Nix, I think you have good upside here. You have Sutton. Troy Franklin catches a touchdown, so stacks are not dead. Mims is getting some routes. Franklin also 44% route participation. So like we're okay with Bo Nix stacks overall. Bo Nix can win somebody Best Ball Mania, and it wouldn't shock me. I think he was so cheap. He has probably provided. He's probably been like, and nobody will talk about this because nobody's thinking on this level, guys. But like, no, nobody's like thinking like this really. He is probably your 18th round Kyron Williams, Puka Nacua this year. Like he's your guy that gave you credible points all year. He beat out a lot of the other schlubs in that range and kind of fell off. Your Daniel Jones is now benched, unfortunately. Derek Carr now benched. I think for Bo Nix, the rushing upside being there, as we talked about from the moment I looked at his numbers and the rookie stuff that I do in January, he was a high efficiency player, high EPA player. Didn't start that way in the pros, but I mean, Chuba wasn't an 18th rounder. Bo Nix was an 18th rounder for up until like mid-August. Chuba was at least going, I mean, Chuba was going higher for points. Chuba never got lower than like 170 though. Bo Nix was like in the 215s and going undrafted. There was a point where I was taking Bo Nix too much and I'm like, in the beginning part of the draft cycle, and I was like, I got to stop taking Bo Nix because nobody else is with me on Bo Nix. Oh, yeah, for you? Okay, great. For your teams, of course. That's what we all care about the most here. But spurious news, I'm glad you have some good teams there. Bo and Chuba, that's not a bad combo to have in your 5% of lineups that are still advancing. So Bo Nix at this point, I think the stack's still a concern. You don't really have the one receiver is going to drive up your entire offense for 1 week, your entire team for 1 week rather in best ball. But I do for Bo Nix, like you're getting good results. The rushing upside's there. He can credibly beat a down week from Lamar. He can beat a down week from Burrow. He can beat a down week from Jalen Hurts. Like I think Bo Nix is quietly. I'd probably want him at this point more than Baker Mayfield down the home stretch because Baker's probably advancing a lot of teams that had a lot of early success. Bo Nix was kind of not great early on, kept you alive, but him storming late is the kind of player that I think is hitting his stride. And frankly, if Cincinnati goes hard on their side, if they're still going week 17 and trying really hard, that defense isn't good. Bo Nix should probably be able to get some production there as well. So Nick's looking good. It's going to happen with Brooks, probably 8 to 10 touches and not a whole lot. He'll take some away from Chuba, but that team wants to run, so it should be fine, I think. Chuba, honestly, I don't think gets impacted that much. Brooks, though, is not going to be the play he was drafted as. He'll be a better play than some guys there. Like his best hope, I think, is being like a Trey Benson kind of player where you're getting 10 touches and maybe sometimes one of those is a touchdown because the other guy went out or you broke a long play or something. Maybe a little more in the screen game too. So he gets you a few more PPR points / half PPR points. But I don't think Brooks is a play that's going to be a saving grace on the home stretch by any stretch. Brock Purdy, shoulder injury for him. Sounds like he could be okay this week, but may miss a week. That one kind of came out of nowhere. Purdy at this point, you have concentrated stack partners. The issue is like nobody drafted Juwan Jennings, and you really shouldn't have because they drafted another wide receiver 3 with first round capital. Just happened to get the injury luck there. So for Purdy, Debo stacks are also failing pretty bad as well. Debo himself, not the same player. Jennings has really dusted him in target rate. Frankly, Kittle is as well. Kittle will be back this week too. That's not great for Debo. So Purdy stacks with the fact that Ayuk went down. McCaffrey, I warned you guys last week too about the lack of red zone usage. He kind of busts his chalk this week as well. Actually, I would say actively busted his chalk this week. Niners just kind of going the wrong way. Maybe it leads to more desperate times, more pass game production out of a desperate team. But they are really not the team that I think people thought they were coming in. They were supposed to be a Super Bowl favorite, and now they're going to have to fight to make the playoffs. Good news is we'll find out if Purdy's playing or not at 12:15. Yeah, is that I assume it's a Sunday game this week. I haven't looked at the schedule yet, but yeah, for Purdy, look, I think he said Kyle Shanahan has a decent reliability rating on injury stuff according to the Coach Speak Index, which still a great follow. A little too much victory lapping on some stuff, but I still like the guy. But like, I get it. You got to promote your stuff. I understand as much as anybody. But like, you got to balance it out. Where's the bad? Where's the stuff we got wrong? But he did point out recently that I think Shanahan's got like 80% reliability on injury stuff. So the hope is that you should get Purdy back within a week, if not, next week at the latest. Alvin Kamara coming down here. I don't know what to do with Alvin Kamara. Yeah, he had a couple of big. Look, we all do. My big bet was Marshawn Lloyd. So I mean, at least I was unlucky. Fucking Marshawn Lloyd got Zamir White's workload. I think we were talking about RB3 on the year. But that's neither here nor there. I'm not making this. I'm not sure. We're not doing the dunking on anybody. I think he's a great dude. He's doing great work. Kamara. I don't know what you expect moving forward. Taysom Hill being so involved and being the Swiss Army knife that Darren Rizzi, with all his Riz, he is excited to get Taysom Hill all the touches possible. Still have a pass game there. Okay. Well, it sounded like when you compare with Zamir, that sounds like coach speak stuff. But yes, that was a case of Kyle Shanahan not being accurate. That's true. But I think historically it's not as bad as it seems, was I think the main point of what I was trying to say. Anyway, for Kamara, I think you're losing touchdown equity. The offense is not as good. If it does break plays, it seems like it's a kind of sketchy MVS play. Taysom Hill breaking ridiculous runs. Kamara just doesn't have that kind of juice anymore. Still getting good pass game work, still involved. Still, if they're in the red zone, he's got a 50% shot at getting the touch. But I don't know that I love where he's going right now. If he's a guy who's like the one who's been carrying you, I think that sort of gets a little bit worse. Kyler Murray with the bye week. They probably wouldn't do an investigation. No, I mean, the teams don't care that much really. And also like, it's one of those injuries too, where it's not like deliberate manipulation. They just thought he could get back in. He couldn't get back in. I probably should have more precise medical staff stuff on it, but I don't think it really matters. They didn't lie in an injury report. They just thought he was going to be one way and he wasn't. Kyler Murray bye week this week. One of the better QBs, I think, to have on the home stretch. He's not as good as the elites, but can spike. So I think for this point with Kyler Murray, you're getting what you paid for out of him. You want some more upside. He's not a league winner. Games like this are legit albatrosses, but the hope is that you're seeing the better side of him now. 3 out of the last 4 games over 21 fantasy points. That's what you're hoping for here. And I do think he's starting to combine dedicated passing to McBride and Harrison with a little more of that rushing upside. And I think at that point, that's what you really want to hope for the best case for him and for that stack. Jared Goff, the big week for him, vaults him back up to top 14. We know the ceiling is there week to week. The motivation's not going to be there for him. I think the real big thing is that this is kind of a false flag, like big game week for him, where like he put up the huge numbers. It was coming off the game where he threw 5 picks and it felt like they wanted to course correct given how the Lions approach things. And they could do that against Jacksonville with really no impunity whatsoever. They can just do whatever they want. For Jared Goff, the one thing that they do have going for them is like, they want to make an MVP run for him. They can choose to do it at any point they want. And you do have games, too, that should be competitive enough, like the Niners game in week 17. That one was a chalk fest at the beginning that now so many parts of that early in drafts are dead with. I mean, Laporte is going to come back at some point, I would think, but like he doesn't look great right now. Amon-Ra had the huge week here, but he hasn't been fantastic week to week. Obviously, Ayuk out for the year. Debo's been a bust. So the more unique Detroit Niners stacks week 17 might have the biggest upside. That's that. Good. They should throw 30-yard passes. Like you want to beat up on a team, beat up on a team. There's nothing wrong with beating up on a team. It's opponent's job to stop you. And Dan Campbell's always been a coaching aggression guy. So I support it personally. And for fantasy, you should support it too. Unless you don't have Lions, in which case, I got it. Bijan Robinson, 8 fantasy points this week. Bit of a down game. Denver's going to do that to people. Nothing surprising there. So I think you're in a good spot for the home stretch. Atlanta, good offense. Bijan allows them to do things in terms of like run game looks or pass game looks. Like when they bring in Algier, it's pretty obvious they're going to run it. That's sort of the main thing that Bijan has going for him. Sucks that he had the one down week, but at this point, I'll probably just make you a little bit more of a low advance rate guy than some of the other guys up top, and that's probably a positive overall. I'm going to look at QBs next. We did cover most of them, guys. If you enjoy this content, again, this is the most niche thing I do every week, but if you are here and you're with me on it, hit the like button, subscribe. Your engagements matter a lot for me, and also do this video every week, no matter whether it's rain or fucking shine for my best ball advance rates. And I'll tell you, it's been a lot of fucking rain since the RBs decided to stick their dicks in my ear. Lamar Jackson, Joe Burrow, Hurts, Allen, Baker, Jaden, talk about all these guys. Bo Nix, Purdy, Kyler. You know my takes on that. Jared Goff. Geno feels like there should be better days. He's had his bye week already, so he'll move ahead of some QBs when he plays and they're all off. JSN getting the better route tree, I think is a positive for Geno. It just gives him one more valve to actually target with a lot of volume as opposed to having constantly take the deep shots downfield with DK Metcalf. Obviously, we want to see deep shots to DK Metcalf as well, but JSN Geno, the fact that JSN retained that usage with Metcalf coming back in, I think a really big good sign for JSN. Frankly, that he needed and that Geno stacks probably needed as well. So Geno Stacks could win a lot down the home stretch. Matchup against Chicago doesn't look great for week 17. But hey, they're going to pass no matter what. So that's really the main thing there. Sam Darnold at number 12. Again, had the bounce back week, which I called. Just when you have a game that's as bad as he had the week before, kind of makes sense to generally try to target at least a little bit the guy on the bounce back when he's not a terribly bad player. That said, Darnold, precarious, I would say, fantasy-wise. There could be bad games. He doesn't seem to do a good job creating alpha games for Justin Jefferson, which hurts the stack value, also hurts his own upside because he doesn't have one guy to reliably feed for 150 yards and 2 touchdowns. Did get Addison more involved this week, which is a positive. More crossing routes for Addison getting into space because Darnold doesn't want to throw those 50-yard bombs up in the air quite as much to Addison as Kirk Cousins or even Nick Mullins did last year. So for Darnold, I think there's hope still for this offense. I just feel like it should be better given that's a Kevin O'Connell offense, and I think highly of him. Thank you for this one. Tune the thoughts and the prayers. I think you have a top team up top, don't you, on BBM this year? Thanks for all your hard work. I appreciate it. Oh, there you go. Second place on BBM, and I watch you the most. Love your analysis. Thank you. That's nice to hear. Technically, 2 of our boys. I mean, we'll look at BBM DB in a moment, but Mathology, #1 scorer right now. And Tune the thoughts here. Another one who I saw was like, I know that guy. So thank you. I appreciate that. And I hope it works out well for you, man. Like, it's tough that there aren't regular season prizes in the year where all you guys are killing it. But I hope it does well for you down the home stretch. And I hope I don't see you in any pods as well. those 2 things equally. Patrick Mahomes at number 13, just a bust of a pick. This is one that I've been on all year. I don't know what else to say about it. The stack is bad. He's not great. He'll be great in the playoffs. He's going to throw a lot more. So that's that. Payout for number 2 last year was, I think, what, 250K? I know you have to be. I'm sorry. I don't mean to bring it up, but it has to be the first thing you think about. Look, I mean, it's tough to do it. I wish you'd put the same team in like the marathon or something, but that's the trade-off. And that's why I've said too, for me, like, I think splitting the payouts was positive because I was never going to build those kind of teams. But for you guys who did, like, I'm proud of you guys for building teams that are good. It's amazing to be able to do that in a tournament with 570,000 people in it. So more kudos to you. Oh, you have 200K last year. There you go. Tough seed. Kirk Cousins, 5.9 fantasy points, gets killed by Denver, 2 down games in a row. He'll beat up on soft defenses, good defenses, a little bit tougher to love. Cousins, though, at 14, I don't think you're mad about it. He wasn't a guy I took a lot because I took mostly the Washington side in my Atlanta stacks. So you could honestly beat up on Washington week 17 and win you everything, and it wouldn't shock me either. That defense is not good, even though it looks better than it probably has. Aaron Rodgers, what is this team going to do? They have to pull the plug at some point. It feels like everything Jets media-wise is acknowledging the season's a bust. Garrett Wilson, Devontae Adams coming down this week. Wasn't it a weird touchdown for Green Bay? I forgot for Jets this week who got the fucking touchdown. Anyway, Jets to me just not going the right way. I don't see a pathway for Rodgers to win you BBM. I don't see a way for him to even be useful coming playoff time. It also reports that the Jets might move on at QB this year, which they could do without a lot of financial penalty. So that was it. Brees caught one. Okay. It's like, was there another one too it was fucking Yeboah. Kenny Yeboah caught one. I was like, I know there was one weird touchdown there, and I'm trying to think of how he got to his fantasy scoring. But yeah, it was a Brees touchdown and a Yeboah touchdown. But yeah, so for Rodgers, I don't expect it to happen. I would expect Herbert to pass him. Herbert passed it over expectation a lot the last month. That's basically it. Stroud could pass him, though. Honestly, how you only put up 11.9 points against this Cowboys defense that can't do shit. He needs a Jared Goff get right spot. He needs like a 500 air yards to Nico Collins get right spot. But Nico only ran half the routes that were available yesterday, so it's probably a part of it. You lose the 1 touchdown early on as well, the 77-yarder to Nico that everybody on social media dying over. Stroud probably passes. That's that. Another former Packer. Is Yeboah a former Packer? I didn't know that, but he has a type. He has a type. Anybody else who could surge down here? I should look at that. Stafford could surge, by the way. That was a monster game. And Puka and Kupp, if you look at their splits, I mentioned it with the Puka play last week and did push you guys to play Puka. I still didn't think like I should play Puka and Kupp. So that didn't occur to me. But both guys have been crushing it versus man versus zone. When they play soft teams and like, again, they're in the hunt for a playoff spot as well and have to kind of keep pushing the pedal to the metal here. Stafford could surge here. He should pass Trevor Lawrence. He can pass Jordan Love. I'm not sure if he will. He could pass Stroud if Stroud keeps sucking. I think Stafford can make a run to top 15, if not top 12, top 10-ish outside that. Caleb running more, going to be a positive for him. Derek Carr having the offense just running better, a positive for him, even though it does seem like it's all flowing through Taysom Hill and through Kamara to some extent. Dak done, obviously. Fields got you a rush this week. It's not a lot down here. AR, some shot at surging back, but he probably killed you with where he was taken ADP-wise. Even more than Stroud, just crazy to say. Top RBs in half-point PPR. Here's the fun one. Derrick Henry, Saquon Barkley, as I mentioned before, I think if I were to choose guys down the home stretch, especially for that Week 17 match against Dallas, assuming that the Eagles were still playing. This is one thing where for Eagles fans, I think Eagles fans want the Commanders to be competitive, especially if you're a Saquon backer, assuming he doesn't give you a shit game in the playoffs. You want them to still be full go for Week 17. Saquon have all his incentives up for play as well, because Dallas is so bad, and Dallas is going to have nobody left. They're going to be playing like Trey Lance throwing to Ryan Flournoy and fucking, I don't know, Jalen Cropper and the two tight ends, because Ferguson might be out by that point as well. I don't think CeeDee Lamb's going to play forever either, based on how he was acting last night. Saquon should beat the shit out of that team if they need to win that game. If they don't need to win that game, it's going to be like Will Shipley playing Week 17, and the Eagles get a quarter. So really key spot coming up here. You want the Eagles to be competitive for a bye week, I think, or you want them to be competitive for the East still, because he could legit put up, he could put up 40 fantasy points versus the Cowboys in Week 17 and win everything. They're that bad. He can break 50-yard runs. Like Joe Mixon broke an almost 50-yard run yesterday. Joe Mixon doesn't do that. Joe Mixon's never really done that, but he, especially now in his late 20s, is not where you're going to do that very often. So that's how bad the Cowboys are. Saquon, honestly, seems like it's a storybook year for Saquon right now with everything's aligning. And I think we all know how that goes sometimes. So I don't, again, not saying this to be Debbie Downer, but everything's aligning for him. So watch out, because honestly, he might give you this kind of game, Week 15, Week 16, one of those. Then Week 17, he goes nuts. He could win BBM while still killing a lot of the teams along the way, which would be a funny outcome if it is going to happen that way. If we're running into the buzzsaw, at least make it a funny route to the buzzsaw. Alvin Kamara, again, we talked about him before. Bijan talked about him. Mixon, a monster. Losing these 3 weeks of Mixon is pretty tough. For Mixon, I think the big issue is just that he's really touchdown dependent in most game scripts, but getting 25 touches a game, getting 6 red zone instead of touches a game, the workload's great. It's really the main thing. Houston doesn't seem to want to pass the ball more, so Joe Mixon will keep feasting off of that. He's a player that certainly matters a lot for me. He's got to overcome a lot to get in the range of these guys, but losing these 3 weeks was just incredibly tough, and he does have the Week 14 bye coming up as well for Houston, the death bye of Week 14 that a lot of teams are going to be suffering from, mine especially. So Mixon's got to give you, I would think, 2 more good weeks here, and then hopefully that's enough to give you the boost to carry through. Getting that 0 and 14 is going to be tough if he's been carrying you. Jahmyr Gibbs, upsides there, but David Montgomery takes so much away from him. That said, he still got 18.8 points in a game where Montgomery went nuts touchdown-wise. So Montgomery, good play here. Again, playing the Niners in Week 14 or Week 17. That's going to help out a lot if you can get there. Breece Hall, huge game here. Maybe the beneficiary of the Jets falling apart here. Receiver is going to try a little bit less, getting open less on routes. Breece Hall is going to keep trying because he's had an awful year and kind of needs to put it down on the home stretch. That said, if you are the Jets and you're planning for the future, at a certain point, I think you might want to pull Breece Hall back a little bit, start using Braylon Allen more, try to get these guys close to an even share down the home stretch because you are literally playing for nothing. But, not every team's going to approach things that way. We'll see how it goes. Mixon, one of the better picks this year, it feels like. I would rather have him down the home stretch than Kamara, I think. I think the Week 17 spot versus Baltimore, too, is one where they'll have some deep shots to Nico hitting or Tank, potentially. And then a lot potentially for Mixon to clean up with power run kind of plays. So, to me, Mixon, I agree, a good setup. It's just this 4-week run really hurt a lot of teams that were relying on him. And frankly, for me, as one of my higher exposed RBs, I wish he would have played those other weeks. Every team chasing me in best ball had Mixon. Oh, that's tough. That's tough. Look, I like Mixon a lot this year. He was one of the older backs I actually did gravitate towards. I thought he was kind of arbitrage or, at least the cheaper version of Derrick Henry and Saquon with the vet coming into a new role, getting a good run. I think he's proven to be that. So I don't feel bad about the take. I just wish that he had played more and that hadn't precluded me from taking the other guys as much. But we did what we did. Kyren Williams, 3 straight weeks of 10 or less fantasy points. Pass game success, not great for him right now. At a certain point, the run good will get better. The roll should get better. Corum is taking occasional explosive plays away from him. I don't know what that means long-term. Still think Kyron's okay. But right now, he's dropping his advance rate. So at this point, he's I think you're hoping he just keeps doing okay for you, doesn't kill your teams, but sneaks in as a low advance rate guy. And he still can spike in these last few weeks too, and it wouldn't shock me either. And he's had his bye week already. That's a positive too. James Cook, good game against the Chiefs, 17 fantasy points. Just hard to predict the good weeks. You do have these 10-pointers in you. Still feels like Ray Davis should be getting more reliable work given the explosive plays and the fact that he's made like 50-yard catch and run kind of plays as well. So like James Cook, I don't think he's going to necessarily lose work down the home stretch. But I mean, the hope is that I guess you're going to beat up against a dilapidated Jets team in week 17, and that could certainly be the case. So James Cook live to me could be a guy who wins BBM still. Just don't have a strong lean on him either way. Montgomery, another key part of my zero RB builds is here with Joe Mixon. So again, I feel good. Like, this is a tough part for me is I feel good about a lot of the fucking picks I made, but just like they didn't come together in lineups the way that I would have liked. But Montgomery, I think, was good leverage against a higher drafted Gibbs this entire time. And power running matchups will get him more. And I guess in matchups where it's just too easy to score touchdowns, will get him more too. He's been down the last few weeks, had the spike week here. Still think Gibbs is the better play, but he was also drafted, 6 rounds higher. So that's sort of the trade-off here for Montgomery. Chuba bye week hangs in at number 11. That's interesting to see. Kyron 99 to 93 to 81% snapshot. It's not good. 80 should still be enough for him to get there, but the main thing for me has always been he needs to get the red zone work. He's not getting as much the last few weeks, I think. We'll see how it holds up, but look, I still think Kyron's a valid play. It's just he's killing you because you took him where Saquon was, where Achane was, where Henry was. Like, that's kind of a tough spot for Kyron, but in terms of winning you a tournament, like, you can win you a tournament. Chuba, okay, here we talked about the Brooks part of it. Brooks, I think, takes some away, but 20 fantasy points probably becomes more reliable, 15 fantasy points. But still, Chuba should be good enough. They don't really, if they could run the ball 2 backs, they'll be happy to do it. Frankly, they would do it with Miles Sanders if they could have, just Miles Sanders is not good enough. Achane, a good week here, has been a lot better since Tua came back in from his concussion. Good targets. We talked about he's been the target leader for the most part. I think John actually passed him this week. But heading into this week, he was the target leader since Tua came back from his concussion. Workload's good. Mostert now seemingly out of the doghouse a little bit. Jalen Wright come out a little bit more down the home stretch. But for Achane right now, I think you're doing okay with him. He has the ability to win you a tournament down the home stretch. That's all you're looking for, really. So kind of like a Kyron Williams here, where he's not as good of a play, but he'll advance you sometimes. That's a good thing. And certainly can win you the tournament at the end of it all. Dobbins, I don't know what's going on with Dobbins. Like, they still give Hassan Haskins goal line work. Gus Edwards looks a lot better since he did, definitely compared to how he did in the beginning of the year. Feels like Gus should get more work, but they're still giving Dobbins bell cow work. He breaks the game-winning touchdown. It's a big part of why he got to 18.4 fantasy points this week. Dobbins, look, one of the best zero RB picks for sure. Still feels like you could get floor in the playoffs in a way that wouldn't be helpful. He's been carrying you, but I'm not mad at him. Jacobs puts a big week here. I prefer the Mixon kind of guy. Honestly, Mixon and Montgomery, I did prefer to Jacobs by a pretty wide margin exposure-wise. Jacobs can get there and on the home stretch too. They play Minnesota. Tough game in the week 17. Could be the kind of game where you give it to your RB, try to make him do some power running to get you really just pressure off the QB. So for Jacobs at this point, yeah, Jacobs, I don't mind. I think the ADP, though, is a little bit tough. You're losing out a lot of guys. Like Cook's outperforming him, Mixon outperforming him a little bit later. You're not in a great spot with Jacobs, but he's kind of a low advance rate guy that could maybe give you points if all the other RBs bust, which who's to say that can happen at this point. And Chase Brown, another one of my key plays on the year. I feel like 3 of the biggest parts of my portfolio are in the top 15, and I feel like I should have better results with it, but here we are. Chase Brown, though, 16.8 fantasy points this week, has not given up a snap since Khalil Herbert fumbled that one play to start, so that's basically it for Chase Brown. He's looking good right now. Motivation for Cincy. If Cincy does call off the dogs, they probably still keep playing Chase Brown and give him maybe even more work. So I don't think he's dead no matter what, and he's been a great part of the teams and one of the highlights for me of the year. Harbaugh said Dobbins was the hot hand this week. Okay, I mean, we'll see. We'll see. And Dobbins and QJ running pure on touchdown variants. Yeah, that's fair. I mean, Quentin Johnson, I don't think is running pure on it. It's just that that's what he's doing. He just gets open downfield. That's all he can do. And it's also too like chunk players, guys with decent ADOT who have 4 to 6 targets a game. Like those are kind of your sweet spot guys. Mooney, a similar equivalent in Atlanta, because you're getting the deep shots. Like it just takes less for them to get there to get one touchdown. Yeah, it's tough for the lad bag holders, I would say too, and that's why I make fun of Adams. Like I think Quentin Johnson with the touchdown expectation, like I would probably gravitate towards more in half PPR at this point. But lads putting up 100-point game or 100-yard games, like they're doing well. They're passing a lot more than I thought would ever been possible. But they're kind of doing like Dallas did. Like I would watch out. They're a smarter team, but like they could be like Dallas it was this year, where Dallas last year learned, hey, we're not playing well. Let's start passing more. Oh, great. Things are working. Then this year they go, yeah, let's stop passing over expectation. We're done with that. And then they just fucking lose again. And it's like, I wonder if that's the Chargers, if like they really learned something or they're just trying something that's working now and they go back to their old bullshit again next year. But if they keep playing like they are right now, like Herbert should be a top pick next year, or not a top pick, but like, top eight, at least top 80 again, like somewhere in that range. Probably Ladd goes up to the 4th, 5th round range where you can go to die like the Christian Kirks and Keenan Allens. No, Ladd's going to be better in year 2. I just think my concern point for the Chargers would be though that like they're passing a lot now out of desperation, but they like if they want to get their way, they can get their way. I think they'd rather just be run dominant. But hey, they adjusted. Teams adjusting, always something to applaud, I think. Herbert had a foot injury, which may have led to a slow start. I don't think that's it. You can still have him back in the pocket passing. They just wanted to run the ball a lot more, and they realized it didn't work. I think was really the main thing. And then they recognized, hey, we can try to get more production through the pass game and maybe still avoid risk. Like Herbert's throwing more, but he's not taking risky throws. Like he's throwing pretty safe stuff. I don't know. I think if you want to give him cover, you can. I don't think that was the reason why they were underperforming. I think it was deliberate play calling. The play calling looks completely different. Like you wouldn't, whatever. It wouldn't look one way and then the other way because of one guy having an injury. Like they wouldn't just call it completely differently. It's not like he's running more now, but he's not running so much that every play is a bootleg. He's still in the pocket 99% of the time. Jamar Chase, your top scoring wide receiver in half PPR. We talked about him. Amon-Ra, big spike week here. Love to see more. The downside's been rough for him, especially for like a guy who's really should be a dedicated 8 to 10 catch guy. Just doesn't get that some weeks when they're doing goofy shit. Jefferson, it really bums me out because I think he is as talented as Jamar Chase, maybe more. I think he is more talented than Amon-Ra St. Brown functionally. I think he's better than CD. Like I think he's better than every receiver in the league in terms of what he is. It's just not there with Jefferson. Again, we're moving on here. I got a fucking video to get through, Adam. I think sometimes, Adam, you think it's like this one-on-one combo, and I appreciate you making lively chats, but I got to get through here. We're fucking 45 minutes in. Justin Jefferson, at this point, think should have better games. Darnold, though, is just not somebody who's going to press the action enough and not going to force feed him 10 targets. His big game should have been against Jacksonville when Darnold threw the 2 picks in the end zone. That was the game you needed Jefferson to have. Instead, he put up 7 fantasy points when obviously that would have been, 25-ish if everything converted. So for Jefferson, to me at this point, I think that there's something that hasn't been tapped yet. The issue is much like Addison, I don't know how he gets there because they're not using him the same way they did in the past. So that's sort of the main thing for me with Jefferson at number 3. Wish he would be better. The fact he's still number 3 despite a year that's been dog shit speaks both to how bad receiver has been, but also how good Jefferson is, even in adverse conditions. But it's just like this is a more low-risk version of the Kevin O'Connell offense. And I think if you had a Cousins site back there, like a true gunslinger, probably a better year for Jefferson, but we're not getting that. So it is what it is. And a little bit more luck, too. Frankly, that shit with Darnold throwing the picks last week was just bad luck for Jefferson. CeeDee Lamb, 15 fantasy points here this week. He might be dead down the home stretch. I think he probably gives you a couple more games. But, I don't know what they're keeping him out there for. You just paid him so much money. Your star QB is out. It's not like even you're building anything for next year. What does he need to build with Cooper Rush? Nothing. What does he even need to build with Trey Lance? Nothing, really. Lance playing this year, probably mostly to give the Cowboys leverage to get a draft pick off them if there's any value to him producing this year. So for CeeDee Lamb at 14.6, I just don't know what you're getting there. Drake London, 7.6 for him. Not a great week. Garrett Wilson really down for 2 weeks in a row. He outperformed my expectations, but now we're seeing what I'd worried about the Jets all year. So at least that's one I got right from the no fade. Terry McLaurin, 1.5 fantasy points. Not good. Just did get targets this week. Was shut down, whatever. But in reality, I think it's mostly a situation where you got to feed him more. They're not giving him the air yards. They're not giving him the opportunities. And in weeks where he gets the touchdowns, he doesn't get the air yards. Weeks where he gets the air yards, he doesn't get the touchdowns. It's been a really fucking frustrating situation for him. Still a top 7 receiver. Still probably can pass Garrett Wilson, Drake London. So you're happy with what you got out of him, but this is fucking sad that wide receiver 7 is averaging 11.8 half PPR points. Zay Flowers averaging 11.6. Frankly, the guy's coming in not good for him, even though you should just ignore the Deontay Johnson shit and just throw to Zay Flowers. For Zay Flowers in the spot, I think that he is a player that has a lot of upside. The issue is his upside to be a little more easy to hit when there aren't guys you want to feed the ball to as well. Andrews coming on has kind of hurt him. Having Bateman being good enough this year's kind of hurt him. Deontay Johnson, they're forcing him targets to get him going. That's kind of hurt him. They still have Aguilar targets. You still have RB targets. You still have runs that go away on scrambles that maybe could be passes that go to Zay Flowers. that's sort of the issue with Zay. Spike against Houston could be there, but honestly, that game could play defensive and it wouldn't be a shocker either, at least on the Baltimore side of the equation where they shut down some key guys, maybe like a Zay Flowers. Brian Thomas Jr., how to get there with Mac Jones is tough. He's running better routes now. One thing I talked about when in the big board is like really wanted Brian Thomas to go to a team, kind of like a Vegas or something like without a Devontae Adams, where it's like open runway for the guy to get all the routes, expand his route tree, get better. Because Brian Thomas at LSU was a lot of go ball bullshit and like, great with it, high efficiency and all that, all stuff I look for, but wasn't a great target earner. He didn't do that a ton this year with Trevor Lawrence out there. Now, because they have nobody left, you have no Christian Kirk, Gabe Davis now out for the year. They're actually running Brian Thomas some creative routes, giving some in-breaking routes, some cutters and stuff like that. He's getting a better route tree. That's going to make him a better player for next year. The issue, though, is it's Mac Jones throwing the ball, and the team is dog shit. And frankly, Brian Thomas is just not going to get the deep plays he was getting before that give him the real upside. So Brian Thomas, I think if you got him, it was a good pick. The issue is he's probably going to lose to Ladd McConkey in that range down the home stretch. Keon Coleman, not a threat. DeAndre Hopkins, a threat now, a little bit in that range. He's going to lose some equity to guys near him because like the ceiling's not there for him. And I don't know how it's going to get better with the team. I mean, when you have reports about firing Doug Peterson, you didn't do it, and the coach is still hanging on, that is one of the worst things for your staff and your team and all of that. So Brian Thomas, kind of a wasted year, but not really, because I think he's going to be better set up for the future. As long as they keep playing him and giving him creative routes and helping him build, he'll have a better shot at being good next year. I hope so. but in general, though, like Brian Thomas, even if Ladd were to miss this week, like then you have 2 weeks left, I guess, for him to pass him. But I still think Brian Thomas like is very vulnerable to guys around him with how this offense is flowing right now. It's just not going to be good. Darnell Mooney with the hamstring might be out too, so we'll see how that goes. Bad week for Mooney. Mooney's been one of the better parts of Atlanta's offense. Certainly a guy who's been helping a lot of teams advance who went RB heavy early on because he's been one of the better receivers from pick 100 to 215. So for Darnell Mooney, he could shift advance rates a lot more than it might seem. As long as he can go at some point before the Washington game in week 17, you're in a good spot because Mooney can put up 20 to 30 fantasy points in that spot potentially if things mark right. Though I guess he hasn't hit 20 on the year. He hasn't hit 20 on the year more than once. But I think for Mooney, the hamstring thing though, like there's a lot of teams that I have to assume are relying on Mooney as like their number one receiver. That can be really precarious on the home stretch if he does miss time. Jaden Reed, 8.8 fantasy points this week. I think he had a touchdown, right? That one didn't get called back. So it's just not good usage for him. Christian Watson gets 150 yards. Jaden Reed can spike for you anytime, but like he probably is not helping you advance too much. Still 12.4 average fantasy points here with the bye week. He's doing well enough here. He's hanging around top 10. It's ugly at receiver. Jaden Reed is another receiver who's not totally bad. Cotton is still 13 does feel pretty bad. JSN, another big week, 16.8 half PPR points. As mentioned, the usage is good for him. I would buy in on JSN if you can. And DFS now before the price tag's probably up already enough. But his routes look good. His routes look the same as they were with Metcalf out. So they figured something out in between that period of losing Metcalf, not having that one game playing like dog shit, playing really well the next week. And now JSN, they're finally treating like they should, which is like a really good cutting route kind of tree and an occasional deep shot that comes from kind of flowing over the middle and cutting up. That's where JSN's doing well for himself. So I think he's good. I think the spot's going to be okay for moving forward. Tough match against Chicago again for the home stretch, but I think for JSN, this is the JSN you want to see. And he is another guy for me where the growth we see this year, I think should really impact his ADP next year. I hope I keep this stuff in mind too, where like I need to remember these things I'm talking about now. Like Brian Thomas, I expect to be a lot better in year 2 for what he got in year 1. JSN, I expect to be a lot better in year 3 for the growth we're seeing here down the home stretch in year 2. Godwin, just as I am the KY mentioned, it is sad to see him here 4 weeks out now. He is still wide receiver 13. It was frankly one of the best picks on the board this year. Cortland Sutton doing well. Malik Neighbors, we'll see. Tommy Cutlets, Tommy DeVito starting for the Giants. To DeVito's credit, he did get the ball to the guys downfield, take some shots with Neighbors. He can also get some of that Wandale check down stuff he got last year as well, or just general check down stuff. So Neighbors might still be able to spike some upsides. He definitely looked a good pick early in the year. It's been awful. I'm hoping the bye week gets him right as well. Another week away from his concussion, maybe a positive. Just hasn't been the same guy, but the workload's been there for him, and maybe DeVito can keep him alive. I think that's honestly part of the hope too. It's like at least DeVito showed he can feed a top receiver or feed a number one receiver and create a number one receiver. Like he made Slayton have good games on the home stretch last year. So I think DeVito, not a good QB, but one where your hope is that he can at very least make it more viable for old Malik Neighbors. And honestly, maybe Hyatt too. Maybe a shot of that. Brock Bowers. Our guy Adam's going to be stoked about this one. But Brock Bowers put it down this week. Honestly, he looked like the player he's now because of Kittle missing this week too. Now tight end 1 on terms of the total points, not in terms of average. Bowers, I said it from the moment they got rid of Adams. He should be the wide receiver 1. New coaching staff, I thought, looked invigorated this week. Gardner Minshew, I think that might have been his first 2-touchdown game passing this year. I didn't look back at that, but I'm pretty sure anecdotally that would be off the top of my head. Bowers looked great. Bowers also, I think, the big run plays are also something that are positive for him that you don't get with a ton of tight ends, where you can turn a screen into a big play. It was something we knew in college and also highlighted in the data. But seeing it in real life in the pros still be there at that level is really good. Any concerns you had about his athleticism too, I think have to go out the window when you see him breaking those plays now in the NFL pretty reliably. So Bowers, next year, your tight end 1, I think. Your hope for Vegas is that they bring in complementary pieces for him. Like, you really need to treat him like a true wide receiver 1 hybrid kind of player, and not bring in, like, if they bring in, I don't know, like I'm not up on college players yet because I haven't started the research process, like a McMillan kind of guy from Arizona, who's one of the guys I know is good. One of the young guys or whatever, like, they bring in like a great wide receiver, I would worry about Bowers a little bit. If they bring in just like kind of flots and pieces around him, the offense should flow through Bowers. Like, he's easy button catches that can go for 60 yards. So sort of what you're looking for. They need a QB. They do, but like, honestly, Minshew, I think, had bad play calling this year. So we'll see what happens on the home stretch. I was encouraged by it. I should watch. I'm going to go to my way to watch the Raiders film this week because I saw a little bit of that game. It was like, Raiders kind of looking interesting. The run game was not as good, which is maybe going to be a long-term issue, but I thought they were passing with a little more oomph, I guess would be the best way to put it, than they have in the past. But some of that could just be Bowers kind of looking good. Kittle, McBride on a bye week. McBride, I think, very live to take the wide receiver 2 or tight end 2 spot overall. But I'm happy with McBride with what he's doing. Honestly, elite tight end has been so bad this year. Getting McBride working well enough, I can take it at this point. Kittle at number 2. He should be back from the hamstring this week. The issue is, does he have Purdy this week? That'd be kind of a problem for him. But he's been basically wide receiver 2. That's sort of what we're hoping for. I have not looked at Shedur's numbers this year. I have to say, last year, though, Shedur's numbers were really bad compared to how people treat him. So I'm curious to see my takes, but I try not to worry about the incoming rookies until January. And then I go hard, and then I provide, I think, the most EV in the business for rookie takes. But we'll see how that goes this year. Honestly, though, it's going to go great. It's the one thing I know I can hit every year for the most part. So, of course, it's going to somehow go wrong like 0 RB this year. Travis Kelce, 1.8 fantasy points this week. I don't even know how that happened, to be honest. Noah Gray had the big week. I guess that just took away from Kelce's theoretical output. But Kelce, reliable target. Just nothing got going here either. Hopkins didn't get going. Worthy got his stuff. I guess that's why if you have kind of a downfield shootout game, you're going to get less production from Kelce and Hopkins. If you have a chunk play game, maybe you're going to get more from the old guys. But I don't really think Kelce's a bad play. In fact, he's tight end 4 after a 2-point game. Kind of speaks to tight end as well. But for where he was going in the beginning of the year, he needed everybody to get injured. But now that they have, and now that frankly there's going to be a little more desperation for KC, got that first loss out, they're now not going to be a cinch to get a bye. I think it's probably good signs for Kelce. And his bye week already happens. That's positive too. Cade Otton should be a little bit more efficient here. Had the down week, kind of got figured out last time out with no Mike Evans, no good receivers left. Having Evans out there to stretch the field should help him out a little bit. Don't know that we see the 24.6 point games very often. I think you're going to get more 14-ish, 15-ish games down the home stretch, which at tight end you would take. Probably their easy number 2 target unless McMillan really comes on strong for them. Jalen McMillan it is down the home stretch. Kyle Pitts at number 6. Taysom Hill at number 7. Taysom Hill, not a tight end, an underdog, though apparently he's spiked enough to help out some teams advancing this week at QB. But Taysom, the role's really good. Taysom on DK, on drafters, probably a play you might need down the, or honestly, I would say probably, but a good shot of being a play you need down the home stretch because Taysom's role is now strong hybrid role. There's still pass game theoretical production there. That's how it's looking. Let's breeze through tight end here so I can get out of here in 1 hour because I fucking went long as always on this. This video is like my least enjoyable one because like I have to fucking show my BBM entries and go like, I got my ass kicked again. It's talking about players that I just wasn't on. But for some reason, I spend the most time laboring over it and really getting every take I have out on every player. Jonnu Smith, by the way, have to highlight that. Huge game for him. I don't fucking know why. Some touchdown equity. He's kind of getting the rub routes that Tyreek got last year, which is good for him at the goal line. So he could have upside down the home stretch. He's worth his ADP now, being tight end 9. Tucker Kraft going the wrong way, Jonnu going the right way, but these guys, to me, kind of the same thing. You got good production out of them, and probably should be happy you got anything out of them. Zach Ertz, 15.7 this week. He's continues to be a fucking anathema to Ben Sinnott. Ben Sinnott should be out there, but we're not doing that. Hunter Henry, Komet, Laporta out. Hopefully Laporta can get back soon. He needs to pay off any shot at his ADP. But he really being out opened things up for everybody else in that offense. And that's a side end for you. And Dalton Kincaid, worst of the elite picks, unfortunately. All right, BBM DB, the even worse part. Let's do it. All right, so my team's here. I think we're advancing under 11% for me. Why is everybody else's names and not mine? All right, there we go. So we're advancing 10.7%. So they fucking dropped my expectation between when I looked at it this morning and now. I was expected to advance 15 out of 150, and now it's 14.7. The good news for me is I still have 34 teams within 50 fantasy points. That includes the ones, the bad news is that it includes the ones that I'm advancing right now. So anything that's in negative numbers would go in that batch. So I'm not far off. I have 5 teams in first place, 11 teams in second place, 11 teams in third place. So I'm under expectation, to be clear, on first and second. It's not a surprise, but just going to say it outright. 13 teams in fourth place, 18 teams in fifth place, 15 teams in sixth place. I have a lot of teams that are like lurking around the middle. I just don't know if they can make the jump. So that's where I am right now. Knowing that week 14 buys are going to cripple my teams as well is hurting me a lot. But that's sort of what my view is on things. My best teams look okay. Like I have more unique stuff than a lot of other teams out there. This one's a Kyler Bo Nix team with Joe Mixon, Jalen Warren, Ford, Dowdle, Bucky Irving, Justice Hill. So like alive, but the second RB is a little bit tough compared to all the star RBs that are going to be advancing at a high clip. Chase advancing for this team, Nico coming back in, Evans coming back in, Zay, Zay hopefully having better games. Cortland Sutton surging, Michael Wilson useless, Whittington extra useless, Josh Reynolds super useless, McBride and Fryermuth in there. This is kind of what you're hoping for, is like a team like this can just have the spike weeks from a Nico, a Mike Evans, whoever's advance rate's low. Maybe somehow Josh Reynolds is like a Zay Jones type a couple years ago and advances the team. That's what you're really hoping for teams like this. So not having the Bengals stacked up with it makes it more unique. Yeah, as Ross is saying here. That's what you're hoping for. And I'm not saying this like this whole team, this one team is like my holy grail and this is the hope and this is what you should be wanting. But it's more that like if you feel like you're dead in the water, you're not really dead, because a team like that could have enough unique levers that hit together. Like there's not going to be teams that are advancing at a high clip with their Henrys and Saquons and all those dudes that have Mike Evans, that have Nico, that have the guys. So you just need to see a wide receiver correction happen in the playoffs. That's sort of the main hope. Or that those guys ping pong days, because no matter what, some of the top advancing players don't have them. My number 2 team is also a Kyler Bo Nix team, which is interesting. And another Mixon team as well. Kyler, Jaden, Bo Nix. So really loaded QB room theoretically. And should be able to survive week 14 on that front. Joe Mixon, James Conner, B-Rob, Chuba, Bucky Irving, Kamani Vidal. Vidal's probably dead. But I knew that in the beginning. I don't care about that one wheel route touchdown, guys. He's been dead all year. Marvin Harrison, Drake London, Keenan Allen. Keenan Allen could maybe spike again down the home stretch. McLaurin, Sutton, Franklin, Mims. Laporta, Sinnott. Laporta not healthy right now, but will be healthy at some point. Having a healthy lineup with unique players is sort of the main thing you're looking for here. My best team that's not advancing is this one, down 20 points, 21 points. Jaden, Herbert, Derrick Henry team with Brooks, Eckler, RB room is having a tough time. Estime getting fucked this week, by the way, was really not fun either for some of this stuff. Amon-Ra St. Brown, Nico, McLaurin, Ladd on this team. There you go. Ladd and Herbert stacked up. I swear to God, if one of my fucking hopes and dreams is a Ladd Herbert team, I'm going to be the saddest boy in the world. A Ladd Quentin Johnston double stack. In fact, unreal. Though, you know what, man? Oh, God, they could beat up on the Patriots in week 17, right? That's the matchup? Oh, no. That would be, well, hey, we're live. Tez Walker coming along for the ride, our uninvited friend here. And Mark Andrews, Jonnu Smith. Look, it's not bad. That one hopefully can make up the 21 points. This is where we are. A lot of teams within 10 here. A lot of teams within 50. We're not too far off. I'm glad. I would make my day to have one team make the finals at this point. My worst team, let's look at this. And then we'll look at the other streamers as well. AR and Derek Carr, Zamir White. I looked at this team last night and was like, this team doesn't feel like it should be this bad, but it obviously is. I get it. Zamir White, Trey Benson, Singletary, Ezekiel Elliott, Marshawn Lloyd, Bucky Irving. Just a bunch of dudes who lost their roles or never got a role or never were healthy. And then Bucky Irving, who was one of the best picks on the board, and I fucking touted him. So please, let's remember the good stuff. Puka Nacua, Chris Olave, Michael Pittman, Xavier Worthy, Jamison Williams, all spike week guys who don't spike. Marcus Robinson, who's giving me some points. Jalen Hyatt, woof. Cedric Wilson here. Cedric Wilson's giving me more points than fucking Jalen Hyatt. That's so sad for Jalen Hyatt. Trey McBride, Luke Musgrave, Boulevard of Broken Dreams for that one. Zamir White, he's one of those players where I was not in on him. Then the price got cheap enough, and I was like, guess I got to be in on him. And I think that's really one of the lessons too, is like being price agnostic in the beginning, or no, not being price agnostic, being price sensitive in the beginning, where it's like when Joe Mixon's going at fucking 100 in the big board, and it's like, oh man, like this guy, people think he's never going to play in the league again. And of course he's going to fucking sign somewhere. Those guys in the big board, really important. But then later in a draft, like recognizing that a guy is falling for a reason, I think is important. So that's how I feel about that. Pete's BBM teams, our pal Pete at a basically average 16%. His best team is this one right here. Burrow, Bryce Young, Daniel Jones, losing one QB potentially for Pete here. Jahmyr Gibbs, James Cook. I mean, likely losing one QB. Chase Brown, Charbonnet, Shipley. Shipley maybe getting that blowout game versus Dallas to get Saquon out week 17. Marvin Harrison, Zay Flowers, Higgins, Judy, Leggett, Franklin, Burton, Wandale, Kittle, and Bowers. This, man. The part I have that's tough with teams that are like the best teams this year is like a lot of them is like, I don't even know how this is like the best team. We also should look real fast. Our guy Mathology and Two in the Thoughts, who Two in the Thoughts in the chat before. Mathology's top team, a weird one too. Hurts, Burrow, Jaden, Achane, Saquon, Joe Mixon, Chase Brown, Bucky Irving. So he nailed RB based on what we know so far. And frankly, the fact too that he's got, I guess, yeah, you could have taken Barkley at Achane's spot and then taken Henry instead, but that would make him a little bit less unique. So having Achane as a lower advance rate guy, pretty good for him too. Jamar Chase, McLaurin, J-Mo, and then Downs, Mooney, Tolbert, Johnny Wilson, Freiermuth, Gesicki, Ertz. So tight end room working, feels fragile. Wide receiver room working. You need Chase to keep going. But that's the number one team in the world. And I think that's sort of the, that's a nutted RB room. Our guy Mathology, the irony, our horn dog here, the nutted RB room. Number two in the Thoughts, who was in the chat before. Lamar, Justin Herbert, Will Levis. Will Levis is giving him a 0 on the year. Fucking Will Levis, man. Same thing. Derrick Henry, Joe Mixon, Kamara, Gus, Chuba Hubbard. So he's doing it with 4 RBs. Fantastic RB room with those 4. Jamar Chase, Cooper Kupp, Higgins, Sutton, Jacoby Myers, Thielen. Ooh, that's tough. Boyd, also tough. Bowers, good. Likely, tough. Jonnu, exceeding expectations lately. These are the teams you're going against the top teams. And I'll say, and this, again, not no respect to those guys, but just in general, my vibe across all the top teams I've seen. A lot of ones that just like don't feel that great. So I'll say for you guys out there, like they had a lot of great production at RB. Like if that doesn't go well, if the game scripts get weird, the teams don't get in the red zone for some reason, the games where they need to in those various weeks, I think there's a lot of fragile top teams. So like real full success, full kudos. I'm not gonna be the one to piss on people's parades for getting shit right here, but heading into like a tournament format, there's a lot of fragility up top still. Eric Beimfor, you're seeing how it goes for a guy who was crushing early on. So this is why we don't victory lap advance rates earlier. Not that Beimfor was, because he knows it's better than anybody. But now down to a 14% advance rate for him. His top team is this one with Jaden, Purdy, Mixon, Aaron Jones, Kendre Miller. That's a tough 0. Chuba, Ray Davis, because that was earlier and he was going higher, it looks like. Ray Davis, Bucky Irving, Elijah Mitchell. That's another tough 0. Drake London, Devontae Adams, Zay Flowers, Higgins, J-Mo, Yoshevich, Tez Walker, and Kittle and Bowers. Not tight end. Honestly, if you nail tight end this year, that's one recurring theme I'm seeing. You probably are doing a little bit better than you should because tight end is so bad this year as well that getting just 2 reliable producing tight ends who are giving you better scores than wide receivers seems to really help. Let's see. Crane, of course, our BBM 3 champion. Yeah, BBM 3 champion. He's at 6%. So the one thing I'll have in my year of failure is that I'll have a better advance rate than Pat Kerrane. It'll still probably fucking get to the finals over me. Joe Burrow, no disrespect, of course, but that's just how good Kerrane is at this. Burrow, Bryce Young, Drake May, Achane, Chase Brown, Rico Dowdle. Oh, we took Rico and Zeke in this one. J.K. Dobbins, that's tough to kind of lose out twice at RB in hindsight, I guess, looking at it more. Chase, Evans, Higgins. So double stack with Burrow, going to be common, I think, in the playoffs. Deontay Johnson, Keon Coleman. T. Higgins probably a low advance rate guy that comes along with Burrow stacks a lot. Keon Coleman out, probably gets back in for the playoffs, you would think. Leggett, Demario Douglas, Mark Andrews, K-Dot, and Gesicki. Good tight end run for him. Davis Maddock, who I will continue to give a shout out to, one of the best new YouTube channels of the year. I don't want to do shows like he does. It's a lot of work to book all the guests and have to hear other people's takes for hours a day, but goddamn is man making great content. Check out Davis Maddox's channel if you're not for some reason. I'm sure you are if you're watching this one. Joe Burrow, and especially the Sims video for Battle Royales with Nerdy Tenor and Brick. That one is a must watch, I would say, every week if you want to get better at that stuff. Joe Burrow, Justin Fields, Devon Achane, Tony Pollard, Zach Moss. Ooh, this is going the wrong way for Davis. This room is falling apart a little bit down the home stretch. But Benson, Dobbins, Jamar Chase, Ayuk, all the Jamar Chase teams. So, like, it seems like out of the streamer drafts, it's all Jamar Chase teams because that's the only receiver that streamers took who's doing well. Rashee Rice, Jaden Reed, Brian Thomas, Josh Downs, Yoshivas, Hyatt, Roman Wilson. Woof. Mark Andrews, Noah Fant. That's Davis's team with his 9% advance rate. He's neck and neck with me. It's honestly going to be a battle in the home stretch. See who advances more between me and him. Who else do we have? Our pal Neil Orfield. Neil on 14%. I'll just show his top team. I'll read it, I guess, because we do have podcast listeners. Burrow, Mayfield, Najee, Javonte, Jerome Ford, Bucky, Chuba, CEH, Chase, Neighbors, Devontae Smith, Pickens, Godwin, Wicks, Burton, Josh Reynolds, Kelsey, and Otten. That's a team. That's a team. If I've ever seen a team, that's a team. I can say that much. Anybody else you have to look at here? I feel like those are the big dogs. People like to see Fantasy Flock. I know that. Fantasy Flock crushing. Of course, year of the RB. Going to be a Fantasy Flock kind of year, 25% advance rate. Our pal Fantasy Dog Pound, Pat over there. He is at another RB lover. 17% for him. Top team. Top team, 0 RB. All right. You got Chase. Oh, wow. Doing it. Wow. Waddle, Ayuk, and Deontay. That's a tough team. Great, not even great RB room. Solid RB room. How is this team? Dude, it's just Jamar Chase. It's just Jamar Chase. My big board teams real fast. Big board I'm still doing well on. Frankly, and this is going to be some copium coming up here. Here's big board. Advancing 33% here, so above the expected 25% by a good margin. I do think for what we do here on Splash Play, which is me just covering football from January through the entire year and being really right on rookies for multiple years in a row, I think winning the big board would be good for my bona fides a lot. So I'm rooting for the big board teams just as much as I am for BBM. It has nothing to do with my advance rate. But honestly, it baffles me. Like, is it the 20 rounds? Is it just that my little bit of an edge and rookie knowledge is driving me here? Because I don't get why I'm at a 33% advance rate, 62 entries on the big board, compared to a 10% advance rate on 150 for BBM. It doesn't make sense to me. It bums me out. I'm not sure if it's just getting the combos right. Some of my top teams, like, they don't feel that different. Stafford, Baker, Bryce Young, Kyron, Swift, Brian Robinson, Chase Brown, Jerome Ford. I avoided a lot of landmines of the team at RB. The Rams double stack with Puka and Kupp. Keenan Allen, Terry McLaurin got him late. Watson, Polk, Tez Walker, Trey Palmer, Bus, Pitts and Kmet, and Colby Parkinson doing okay. I don't get why this is doing so much better for me on the big board. Third place teams, I don't know. I didn't do a count of them. I only do a count for the BBM teams because I want to know where they land. The big board, I'm just going to take whatever I get. You can see on the screen. We got 5, 8, 9. Anyway, so 9 teams advancing in third place. Hopefully they'll continue to advance, and hopefully they'll sneak in as well. But I'm just surprised to see it. As you can all see as well, every team on screen here marked with SP is one that I drafted on stream. So I think I only drafted big boards on stream as well. Yeah, I didn't draft any big boards off that I'm aware of. So everything I drafted the big board was here on camera. So we'll see how that goes. But I'm not going to look too closely at them because honestly, I kind of like having the mystery box in one tournament. The same thing going on, 40 out of 150 in the big board, but 11% BBM. Look, I really do think that's the edge. Here we go. Same thing for TX Politics here, advancing twice as many big board versus BBM. I mean, if you guys were watching the stream here, I'd feel like at least we could say correlation there. Like, I think I got people on certain plays and in January and all that. But yeah, I think it was that. I think there's a market edge in the big board, especially early on with just being sensitive to rookie stuff. And also for the big board, I didn't take Jonathan Brooks at all. That might be a larger part than I would have been aware of. Because Brooks, to me, just with the ACL stuff at that point, I actually had the right reaction, which is that there's no way he's going to be back in July, and that might be it. See, I didn't take a lot of Mixon and Henry, so I don't know why that would be. I took Mixon a ton in BBM, but not in the big board. ADP landscape was different. That's true. But I think it's the rookie stuff primarily because I went really rookie crazy. Doing great in the big board with my rookie info. All right, I appreciate that, Broncos. Yeah, look, I know we got a lot of shit right, so I think that trend will continue on. And of course, when the big board hits, we'll be doing that. Drafters, our last stop here in the video that I want to do the least and I spent an hour and 15 on. Great irony of me as a creator. My fucking drafters teams, there's no pathway to first. I finished top 100 last year. This year, I don't fucking think I'm going to finish top 1,000. So tough to see. My top team is Lamar, Kirk Cousins, Kyron, Brian Robinson. Oh, we got Jonathan Brooks back soon. Yeehaw. Ray Davis, Justice Hill, Audric Estime, Jamar Chase, Drake London, Zay Flowers, Khalil Shakir, Jameson Williams, Mooney. We're going to lose potentially for a few weeks. Tyler Boyd, Josh Reynolds, Van Jefferson, Pitts, Freiermuth. Awful tight end situation here. Fucking Pitts, man. 1.9 fantasy points and full point PPR is awful for Pitts. A Sinnott here too. That's a team that we drafted with our guy Ross on stream. Jaden, Jared Goff, the original AR, Aaron Rodgers, David Montgomery, Ramondre, Eckler, Algier, Herbert, Bigsby, fucking Khalil Herbert. I hate all you fuckers who got me onto Herbert at all. I never wanted him, and I fucking took him because the industry was like, Herbert, he might win the fucking. I'll never forget when some dude tweeted at Justin Herzig, like, Spags said that you think Justin Herbert starting for the Bears is wrong. And it's like, well, first of all, is that a hot take that would be wrong? And second of all, you have to narc me out to the guy who doesn't already like me for some reason that I don't understand, even though he sucks Barstool guys off. So anyway, that's my takeaway for Khalil Herbert in the year is that Khalil Herbert was always a bad pick, and now you have to deal with it. Sorry. And I have to deal with it in lineups where I took him. Anyway, this team, I hate it. My worst team down here, comically bad, I'm sure. Cousins, Stafford, Bryce Young, Pacheco. Pacheco, one of those picks too that should have been a lot better. If he got that Kareem Hunt workload all year, he would have been a monster. Zamir White, Jerome Ford, Javonte, Blake Corum, Puka, Marvin Harrison. That Puka Marvin Harrison combo is going to really help out in week 17. Zay Flowers, Deontay Johnson, Curtis Samuel, DeMarcus Robinson, Jalen Tolbert, Casey Washington. This team is a fucking disaster. Top scorer overall, Joe Burrow, Baker Mayfield. All right, so wow. All right, so that's a fun QB room, only 2. Saquon, Kamara, Najee, Rico Dowdle, Bucky Irving, Dylan Labe. So even the good teams have an albatross. Jamar Chase, Cooper Kupp, Terry McLaurin, not helping him out this week, but has helped a lot. Chris Godwin, same thing. Carried this guy, I'm sure, a lot through the early parts. Jacoby Myers, Josh Downs, Jalen McMillan could benefit potentially if he can get back on track with Evans in. DJ Chark, Tyler Boyd. Again, this is your top scoring team. Does this feel like a team that should win? What? How much money goes to first again? Fucking $500,000. Does this feel like a $500,000 team to you? Does it feel like this team should be winning $500,000 for this shit? I don't think so. No respect to Joey Bombs. This is fucking dog shit. So that's best ball for you. Hopefully on tournament sites, there will be a reckoning, a truth. The truth will come to light, and the good plays will be good plays that aren't running backs. That's our hope in the playoffs here as we head into week 12. But I appreciate you guys watching. If you enjoy this content, if you stuck with me for fucking an hour and 20 of me ranting about this shit, please hit the like button. Please subscribe. I appreciate everybody who watches here, but I appreciate the people who like and subscribe and join down below for $4.99 the most, especially that last one, because it helps me put on the show here that frankly does not make a lot of money on YouTube because it's niche content. We do okay here, but it could always be better. And I'm trying to make this a stable thing. We're going to hire producers. That's my goal. Hire another host at some point. Be pretty sick. I want to expand the content, guys. Really the main thing. The more you invest in Splash, the more I'll give you back. That's the promise. Of course, that also applies to NBA. 4 p.m. today, Splashplay NBA channel. I've been crushing every video, cashed all my NBA lineups. Didn't put in a ton last night, but cashed those really big yesterday. Today's a John Collins slate. Of course, the player that I'm always on that the industry is not. So it's going to be a fun day on @Splashplay NBA at 4 p.m. So check that out. Sponsors, $1,000 of bonus cash on Underdog with the promo code SPLASH. Stochastic, 15% off, link in the description. You want to support the show most directly, that does it really well. Affiliate fees from Stochastic go right to the show, and they help me out a bunch here. Big part of why I've been able to get a little more sane here after closing down probably. $30 off unabated. Use the promo code SPLASH on there as well. Get good betting data. Solver, link in the description. Basketball Overlay, fun to support those guys as well. Whatever that deal is, check it out. Thank you to the members. I have to add David on still, but appreciate everybody who's a paying member here. Join below. Support this content. $4.99. $4.99. You can sponsor a child, or you can sponsor an adult man who just fucking wants to rant about football and get a lot of rookie stuff right. Everything else, hit or miss. But that's it, guys. And yes, NBA showed 4 p.m. coming up at Splash Play NBA. So different channel. Check it out there. I'll see you guys then. Gamble responsibly. It's always money time. And I'll be back with you at 4 p.m. talking NBA. So, hey, enjoy your days. And, of course, good luck. Bye-bye.